So, how's my voice? Do I need to raise it or anything? Drink? Yeah, I'm gonna go refill. Okay. I wonder if Forrest is here. I don't think he is. It's okay. Chapter 18. You sure my voice is okay? I could message him. Okay. Chapter 18. When the rep from Upjohn didn't turn up promptly at 10, Lewis gave in and called the registrar's office. He spoke with a Mrs. Stapleton, who said she would send over a copy of Victor Pascal's records immediately. When Lewis hung up, the Upjohn guy was there. He didn't try to give Lewis anything, only asked him if he had any interest in buying a season ticket to the New England Patriots game at a discount. Nope, Lewis said. I didn't think you would, the Upjohn guy said glumly and left. At noon, Lewis walked up to the Bear's Den and got a tuna fish sandwich and a Coke. He brought them back to his office and ate lunch while going over Pascal's records. He was looking for some connection with himself or with North Ludlow, where the pet cemetery was. A vague belief, he supposed, that there must be some sort of rational explanation even for such a weird occurrence as this. Maybe the guy had grown up in Ludlow, had maybe even buried a dog or a cat up there. He didn't find the connection he was looking for. Pascal was from Bergenfield, New Jersey, and had come to UMO to study electrical engineering. In those few typed sheets, Lewis could see no possible connection between himself and the young man who had died in the reception room, other than the mortal one, of course. He sucked the last Coke out of his cup, listening to the straw crackle in the bottom, and then tossed all his trash into the wastebasket. Lunch had been light, but he had eaten it with a good appetite. Nothing much wrong with the way he felt, really. Not now. There had been no reoccurrence of the shakes, and now even that morning's horror began to seem more like a nasty, pointless surprise, dreamlike itself, of no consequence. He drummed his fingers on the blotter, shrugged, and picked up the phone again. He dialed the EMMC and asked for the morgue. After he was connected with the pathology clerk, he identified himself and said, "You have one of our students there, a Victor Pascal." "Not anymore," the voice at the other end said. "He's gone." Lewis's throat closed. At last he managed, "What?" "His body was flown back to his parents late last night. A guy from Brookings Smith Mortuary came and took custody. They put him on Delta, papers rifling. Delta 109. Where did you think he went? Out dancing at the show ring?" "No," Lewis said. "No, of course not. It was just what? What the Christ was he doing pursuing this anyway? There was no sane way to deal with it. It had to be let go, marked off, forgotten. Anything else was asking for a lot of pointless trouble. It's just that it seemed very quick," he finished lamely. "Well, he was autopsied yesterday afternoon." That faint riffle of papers again. "At around 3:20 by Dr. Risenwick. By then, his father had made all the arrangements. I imagine the body got to Newark by 2 in the morning." "Oh, well, in that case, unless one of the carriers screwed up and sent it somewhere else," the pathology clerk said brightly. "We've had that happen, you know, although never with Delta. Delta's actually pretty good. We had a guy who died on a fishing trip way up in Aroostook County, in one of those little towns that just have a couple of map coordinates for a name. Asshole strangled on a pop top while he was chugging a can of beer. It took his buddies 2 days to buck him out of the wilderness. And you know what, by then it's a toss-up whether or not the forever goop will take. But they shove it in and hoped for the best. Sent him home to Grand Falls, Minnesota, in the cargo compartment of some airliner. But there was a screw-up. They shipped him first to Miami, then to Des Moines, then to Fargo, North Dakota. Finally, somebody wised up. But by then, another 3 days had gone by. Nothing took. They might as well have injected him with Kool-Aid instead of Jundafalo. The guy was totally black and smelled like a spoiled pork roast. That's what I heard anyway. 6 baggage handlers got sick." The voice on the other end of the line laughed heartily. Lewis closed his eyes and said, "Well, thank you. I can give you Dr. Risenwick's home phone if you want it, Doctor, but he usually plays golf up in Orono in the morning." "That's okay," Lewis said. He hung up the telephone. Let that put paid to it, he thought. When you were having that crazy dream, or whatever it was, Pascal's body was almost certainly in Bergenfield Funeral Home. That closes it off. Let that be the end of it. Driving home that afternoon, a simple explanation of the filth at the foot of the bed finally occurred to him, flooding him with relief. He had experienced an isolated incident of sleepwalking, brought on by the unexpected and extremely upsetting happenstance of having a student mortally injured and then dying in the infirmary during his first real day on the job. It explained everything. The dream seemed real because large parts of it were real. The feel of the carpet, the cold dew, and of course, the dead branch that had scratched his arm. It explained why Pascal had been able to walk through the door and he had not. A picture rose in his mind. A picture of Rachel coming downstairs last night and catching him bumping against the back door, trying in his sleep to walk through it. The thought made him grin. It would have given her a hell of a turn, all right. Do you need a drink? Does it sound like I need a drink? I'm just asking. Hey, Cyril. Welcome back, Siphon. Cyril, if you're looking to be put to sleep, here I am. Mhm, mm-mm. With the with the sleepwalking hypothesis in mind, he was able to analyze the cause of the dream, and he did so with a certain eagerness. He had walked to the pet cemetery because it had become associated with another moment of recent stress. It had, in fact, been the cause of a serious argument between him and his wife, and also, he thought with growing excitement, it was associated in his mind with his daughter's first encounter with the idea of death. Something his own subconscious must have been grappling with last night when he went to bed. Damn, lucky I got back to the house okay. I don't even remember that part. Must have come back on autopilot. It was a good thing he had. He couldn't imagine what it would have been like to have awakened this morning by the grave of Smucky the cat, disoriented, covered with dew, and probably scared shitless, as Rachel would have been undoubtedly. Would have been undoubtedly. But it was over now. Put paid to it, Lewis thought with immeasurable relief. Yes, but what about the things he said when he was dying? His mind tried to ask, and Lewis shut it up fast. That evening, with Rachel ironing and Ellie and Gage sitting in the same chair, both of them engrossed with the Muppet Show, Lewis told Rachel casually that he believed he might go for a short walk to get a little air. Will you be back in time to help me put Gage to bed? She asked without looking up from her ironing. You know he goes better when you're here. When you're there. Sure, he said. Where are you going, Daddy? Ellie asked, not looking away from the TV. Kermit was about to be punched in the eye by Miss Piggy. Just out back, hun. Oh. Lewis went out. 15 minutes later, he was in the pet cemetery, looking around curiously and coping with a strong feeling of deja vu. That he had been here was beyond doubt. The little grave marker put up to the honor of the memory of Smucky the cat was knocked over. He had done that when the vision of Pascal approached near the end of what he could remember of the dream. Lewis righted it absently and walked over to the deadfall. He didn't like it. The memory of all these weather-whitened branches and dead trees turning into a pile of bones still had the power to chill. He forced himself to reach over and touch one. Balanced precariously on the jackstraw pile, it rolled and fell, bouncing down the side of the heap. Lewis jumped back a step before he could touch his shoe. He walked along the deadfall, first to the left, then to the right. On both sides, the underbrush closed in so thickly as to be impenetrable. Nor was it the kind of brush you'd try to push your way through. Not if you were smart, Lewis thought. There were lush masses of poison ivy growing close to the ground. All his life, Lewis had heard people boast that they were immune to the stuff, but he knew that almost no one really was. And farther in were some of the biggest, most wicked-looking thorns he had ever seen. Lewis strolled back to the rough center of the deadfall. He looked at it, hands stuck in the back pockets of his jeans. You're not going to try to climb that, are you? Not me, boss. Why would I want to do a stupid thing like that? Great. Had me worried for just a minute there, Lou. Looks like a good way to land in your own infirmary with a broken ankle, doesn't it? Sure does. Also, it's getting dark. Sure. That he was altogether and in total agreement with himself, Lewis began to climb the deadfall. He was halfway up when he felt it shift under his feet with a peculiar creaking sound. Roll them bones, Doc. When the pile had shifted again, Lewis began to clamber back down. The tail of his shirt had pulled out of his pants. He reached solid ground without incident and dusted crumbled bits of bark off his hands. He walked back to the head of the path which would return him to his house. To his children who would want a story before bed. To Church, who was enjoying his last day as a card-carrying tomcat and lady killer. To tea in the kitchen with his wife after the kids were down. He surveyed the clearing again before leaving. struck by its green silence. Tendrils of ground fog had appeared from nowhere and were beginning to wind around the markers, those concentric circles, as if all unknowing. The childish hands of North Ludlow's generations had built a kind of scale model Stonehenge. But Lewis, is this all? Although he had gotten only the barest glimpse over the top of the deadfall before the shifting sensation had made him nervous, he could have sworn there was a path beyond, leading deeper into the woods. No business of yours, Lewis. You've got to let this go. Okay, boss. Lewis turned and headed home. He stayed up that night an hour after Rachel went to bed, reading a stack of medical journals he had already been through, refusing to admit that the thought of going to sleep, made him nervous. He had never had an episode of Alexander, stop it. Of somnambulism before. There was no way to be sure it was an isolated event, until it did or didn't happen again. He heard Rachel get out of bed, and then she called down softly, "Lou? Hun? You coming up?" "Just was," he said, turning out the lamp over his study desk and getting up. It took a good deal longer than 7 minutes to shut the machine down that night. Listening to Rachel draw the long, calm breaths of deep sleep beside him, the apparition of Victor Pascal seemed less dreamlike. He would close his eyes and see the door crashing open, and there he was, our special guest star, Victor Pascal, standing there in his jogging shorts, pallid under his summer tan, his collarbone poking up. He would slide down towards sleep, think about how it would be to come fully. If he would slide down towards sleep, think about how it would be to come fully, coldly awake in the pet cemetery, to see those roughly concentric circles lit by moonlight, to have to walk back, awake, along the path through the woods. He would think these things and then snap fully awake again. It was sometime after midnight when sleep finally crept up on him, crept up on his blind side and bagged him. There were no dreams. He woke up promptly at 7:30 to the sound of cold autumn rain beating against the window. Yeah, Alexander jumped up here. He's meowing at me. He threw the sheets back with some apprehension. The ground sheet on his bed was flawless. No purist would describe his feet with their rings of heel calluses that way, but they were at least clean. Lewis caught himself whistling in the shower. That's the end of chapter 18. Man's paranoid. He's scared of going to sleep. Scared of waking up, scared of waking up in the pet cemetery. That was short. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8.5 pages. Looks like chapter 19 is 1 page. Well, 2 pages. One front and back. Chapter 19. May have fallen asleep. You know, I don't doubt it. I have no control how clearly my voice comes through with this mic. Like the other mic had a little dial at the bottom that would mess with the gain. I don't know if it's really working here. Chapter 19. Missy Dandridge kept Gage while Rachel ran Winston Churchill to the vet's office. That night, Ellie stayed awake until after 11, complaining curiously that she couldn't sleep without church and calling for glass after glass of water. Did you? let me switch. Okay. So, you saying that this one sounds better? Huh. Okay. This caused a glass of glass water. Finally, Lewis refused to let her have any more, on the grounds that she would wet the bed. You sound more, not louder, but more. Here? This caused a crying tantrum of such ferocity that Rachel and Lewis stared at each other blankly, eyebrows raised. She's scared for church, Rachel said. Let her work it out, Lou. She can't keep it up at that pitch for long, Lewis said. I hope. He was right. Ellie's hoarse, angry cries became hitches and hiccups and moans. Finally, there was silence. When Lewis went up to check on her, he found she was sleeping on the floor with her arms wrapped tightly around the cat bed that Church hardly even deigned to sleep in. He removed it from her arms and put her back in bed, brushed her hair back from her sweaty brows gently and kissed her. On impulse, he went into the small room that served as Rachel's office. Hold on a sec. Alright, sorry about that. Let me just finish this page and I'll raid out or something. Thank you. On impulse, he went into the small room that served as Rachel's office, wrote a quick note in large block letters on a sheet of paper. I will be back tomorrow. Love, Church. And pinned it to the cushion on the bottom of the cat bed. Then he went into his bedroom, looking for Rachel. Rachel was there. They made love and fell asleep in each other's arms. Church returned home on the Friday of Lewis's first full week of work. Ellie made much of him, used part of her allowance to buy him a box of cat treats, and nearly slapped Gage once for trying to touch him. This made Gage cry in a way mere parental discipline could never have done. Receiving a rebuke from Ellie was like receiving a rebuke from God. Did you do your duo? Fuck, no. Looking at Church made Lewis feel sad. It was ridiculous, but that didn't change the emotions. There was no sign of Church's former feistiness. No more did he walk like a gunslinger. Now his walk was the slow, careful walk of the convalescent. He allowed Ellie to hand-feed him. He showed no sign of wanting to go outside, not even to the garage. He had changed. Perhaps it was ultimately for the better that he had changed. Neither Rachel nor Ellie seemed to notice. And that's the end of chapter 19. Yeah, no problem. Damn. I either missed the chapter end, or this is a hell of a long chapter. Damn. Chapter 20 is a lot of pages. We will save that for the next time.